Alright, hey guys, Will Tipton here. So I made an update to EDVis, the Equity Distribution Visualizer, which is available at dmbpoker.com. And I just wanted to make a video explaining some of the new features because I think they're probably easier to see on video than they are to describe in writing. So the big idea is the same as before. We sort of input one range on the left, we input another range in the middle here, and then on the right we get the equity distributions, and then we can sort of explore those equity distributions using the click and drag here, the slider. So what really changed was the way we input the ranges. So what I wanted to be able to do is to set non-binary fractions of individual hand combos. That is, I wanted to be able to set the fraction of any hand combo in the range to something other than 0 or 1. Like 50% of a hand combo might be in someone's range at some point, and I wanted to be able to express that. And then also I wanted to be able to control suits, right? So in the old interface, you could only set all of the 10-6, well, without a lot of trouble. You can only set all of the 10-6 suited hands together. But 10-6 of diamonds is a lot different than 10-6 of hearts, depending on the board, right? Okay, so I'm just going to go over the interface real quick to say what all the buttons do, and that's it. Okay, so let's see. So as before, if you want to toggle between 0% and 100% of all the hand combos that share one square in this grid, then you can just double click like so. If you want to copy and paste or input a text representation of the range, you can click the edit button, and it'll give you all the hands in what I think is a fairly familiar sort of format. And say I want to add 6-4 of diamonds. Well, I could just go to the end of this list here and type 6D 4D, and then we see 6-4 of diamonds shows up here. So of course the fractions of the hands in the range are indicated by the shade of whatever color is here. So you can see this is a lighter, I guess, maroon than the others, which have 100% of the hands in range. So say I want to clear the range completely, I can just clear that whole edit box and click OK, and the range goes away. So the next thing we can do, so we can use this percent button. If I click the percent button, we get a slider that pops up, and basically it lets us set a range to some range minus some of the best hands and minus some of the worst hands. So if I drag the bottom slider up from the bottom, then I'm removing some of the worst hands, and if I drag the top slider down, I'm removing some of the best hands. So this makes it really easy to get this sort of range that contains all mediocre hands. But if I want to take the inverse of this and get a polar range, get some of the best hands and some of the worst hands, then I can click the invert button, and that'll essentially just give me every hand that I didn't have previously. So now I have some of the best hands and some of the worst hands. Okay, so we've covered edit, we've covered percent, and we've covered invert. Okay, now there's this N button, and you'll notice here that if you hover over pretty much anything on this GUI, you'll get some text description that tells you what it does. So it says that N copies the range to the clipboard in numerical format. So if I click N, it'll give me a box that says it did just that. And so what that means is if I here, let me pull up a text editor here. So if I pull up a text editor and I go edit paste, then all this stuff pops up. So what this is basically is that range in numerical format. Right, so it's not that I really think we should be editing this directly, but if you work a long time creating the perfect range here and you want to save it for later, then you can just export it by copying it to the clipboard, pasting it in a text editor, and saving that text for later, right? So if I want to recover this range later, I can just copy this whole thing. I can go to the edit button and paste it all in. So just paste that whole thing in the edit box, and then click OK, and I get the range back. Great. Next up, there's the rad button. Change the radius of effect of the scroll action. Okay, so if I want to set if I double click, I set the fraction of some hand combos to 0 or 1, but if I want to set it to something in between, I can use the scroll wheel, right? So if I hover over 9/8 offsuit and I scroll up, let me change this. If I hover over 9/8 offsuit and I scroll up, you'll see that I slowly increase the fraction of 9/8 offsuit from 0 to 1. So what this rad button does is it changes the radius of effect of the scroll action, right? So right now, if I scroll up, I just affect Queen 5 offsuit if I'm hovering over Queen 5 offsuit. But if I increase the rad slider and I scroll up here over 8/5 suited, you'll see that not only am I affecting 8/5 suited, but I'm affecting the hands around it to a lesser degree. So that's great. Additionally, if I increase the frequency of a suited hand, I only affect suited hands because often I want to affect suited hands individually without affecting pairs or unsuited hands. So similarly, if I scroll up and increase frequency of some pairs, it only affects pairs, and similarly for the offsuit hands. So basically, if this radius of effect is all the way down, then my scrolling only affects one hand combo. If it's all the way up, then it's going to affect all the hand combos of the particular type. And if it's in the middle, it's somewhere in between. Cool. Okay, so what's next? The only thing, well, I guess there's a couple things that's left. So now let's talk about suits. So there's a drop-down box here on the right, and it lets you select the suit that we're interested in. So let me clear the range first of all. So if I select hearts, you'll notice all the colors are now red, and what that means is I'm only affecting hands which contain a heart, right? So for the suited hands, there's only one suited hand combo for each square that's a heart, right? So for Jack 6 suited, I'm talking about Jack 6 of hearts exactly. But for the pairs, there's a couple different pair combos that have a heart in them. And for the offsuit, there's also more than one, right? So the combos that I'm affecting when hearts are selected are any hand combo that contains a heart. So when I set 8/6 offsuit here, the hand combos that I set, which I can see if I right click, are 8 of clubs, 6 of hearts, 8 of diamonds, 6 of hearts, 8 of hearts, 6 of clubs, and so on. Any hand that contains a heart. So now, what's going to happen if I go look at clubs? Well, there's not going to be any suited hands that contain a club that's going to be set, but there are going to be some offsuit hands because it's going to be the ones that contain both a heart and a club, because I set all the ones that contain a heart, and so now the ones that also have a club will show up. Hopefully that made sense. Okay. So you may have noticed that if I hover over a square, it'll tell me the frequency of that hand, and that also depends on what suit is selected, right? So if I hover over right now, 8/6 offsuit, it'll tell me a third, or 33% of that hand is set. And the reason for that, if I right click, I can see more details. The reason for that is that 2 of the 6 hand combos are set, right? So 2 of the 8/6 offsuit combos that contain a club also contain a heart, so they're set. Okay, I'm not going to dwell on this too much longer, but hopefully that makes sense, right? So we can set, we can set some hands that contain spades, and then that will affect to a lesser extent, the hands that contain clubs, and all hands. And finally, as I sort of mentioned before, if you do desperately want to set the frequency of one particular hand combination, then you can just right click on a square and find it and set that particular hand, right? So if I want to set the frequency of Queen 5 of clubs, I can select that and I can type in whatever number I want, just like that. So I think that about covers it for inputting ranges. The only other thing that changed in this version was a slight improvement to the way the equity distributions are drawn. So let me demonstrate that real quick. And so it's sort of a subtle card removal issue that that's now treated correctly. So let's look at hearts for both players. let's give this guy Jack 7 of hearts, and let's give villain either Jack 4 of hearts or 8-3 of clubs. Well, if you think about it, despite the fact that hero's range is Jack 7 of hearts and villain's range is Jack 4 of hearts or 8-3 of hearts, well, let's think about what that really means. What that really means is that in the spot that we're in currently, our hero would only have played that way with Jack 7 of spades, and villain would have played this way whenever he has, sorry, not spades, Jack 4 suited, Jack 4 of hearts, Jack 7 of hearts. Okay, so hero's only going to play this way when he has Jack 7 suited, Jack 7 of hearts, and villain's going to play this way whenever he has Jack 4 of hearts or he has 8-3 of hearts. So that's why the ranges are like they are. However, if you think about that, what that really means is it means that hero has to have Jack 7 of hearts, but then villain actually can't have Jack 4 of hearts ever, because there's only one Jack of hearts in the deck. Okay. So here, despite the fact that we've set villain's range to contain Jack 4 of hearts, it actually doesn't because of hero's range, right? So hero's range has some effect on villain's range. So the equity distributions that we're seeing here are actually just the equity distribution of Jack 7 of hearts against 8-3 of hearts. Villain's range here is actually only 8-3 of hearts, and that sort of detail is now treated correctly in the graph. It wasn't previously. So suppose we say that hero's range is not only Jack 7, it's also King 9. Okay. It's also King 9, and it's also I don't know, 10-6. Okay. So you'll see over here, if you count the humps, you'll see that well, you see hero's range has 3 different hands with 3 different equities, and villain's range has 2 hands. But if you look at the widths of these sections, you'll see that the amount of each of those hand combos in hero's range are not equal. In particular, this sort of lump up here, which if we select it, we can see it corresponds to King 9, and this lump down here, which we can see corresponds to 10-6, they both have more horizontal space than this section here, which corresponds to Jack 7. And so hero's range here, which contains originally it contains sort of equal amounts of King 9, Jack 7, and 10-6. When we take into account villain's range, that actually affects the frequency that hero actually shows up in this spot, which is these hands, fairly significantly. The fact that villain's range, half the time villain's going to have a Jack 4 here, significantly blocks hero's Jack 7 combos, and to the point where hero's going to have a King 9 or 10-6 here a lot more often. Okay, so I won't get into that anymore. Just suffice it to say that that's now treated correctly. Okay, that's all for now. Hopefully it's much easier to control the ranges that you input into EDVis. All right. Take care. Good luck at the tables.